There are nights that vanish into history without a sound, and then there are nights that echo through eternity. The night Iran crushed Israel's pride was not just a battle. It was not just retaliation. It was a seismic moment, a statement to the world, spoken in fire and resolve, while the world watched in silence. A silence louder than bombs. A silence that tells us everything about the world we live in. What happened that night wasn't just a military maneuver. It was the unleashing of a nation's soul, one that had been ridiculed, sanctioned, isolated, demonized. Iran stood up not with trembling hands, but with steel in its spine. Precision, power, unyielding purpose. Israel, long accustomed to dominance in the region, found itself exposed, rattled, shaken to its foundation. Its illusion of invincibility cracked, not by chaos, but by calculated clarity. The myth of untouchable superiority was shattered publicly, strategically, and completely. It wasn't just Iran that acted that night. It was decades of pressure, centuries of resistance, and a culture forged in perseverance. For years, Iran was portrayed as the villain in the story, painted in Western headlines as irrational, aggressive, dangerous. But on that night, it didn't act with madness. It acted with mastery. And in doing so, it forced the world to confront a truth many refuse to see, that power is not always where you expect it, and dignity cannot be destroyed by drones, deals, or propaganda. Yet as the missiles fell and Israel's pride was scorched in broad daylight, the world did nothing. The so-called defenders of democracy, the loudest voices in times of convenient outrage, stayed quiet. No headlines screamed for justice. No leaders held emergency summits. The same powers that preached accountability became mute. Why? Because silence is the last refuge of hypocrisy. Because when the balance of power shifts and the underdog rises, those who built the system tremble and choose silence over truth. And in that silence, something incredible happened. The oppressed didn't beg. The accused didn't explain. The world turned away. But Iran didn't flinch. It didn't collapse under the weight of sanctions. It didn't break under the threats. It didn't wait for approval. It simply rose. And that rise wasn't just military. It was moral. It was cultural. It was deeply human. Because pride is not arrogance when it's earned through survival, and dignity is not terrorism when it's demanded by the wounded. The most powerful message from that night wasn't spoken through media. It wasn't tweeted or televised. It was burned into the hearts of the forgotten. It told every nation living under the thumb of foreign dominance, you can rise. You can strike back. You can rewrite the script they wrote for you. That's why the world stayed silent, because when the script flips, the authors go quiet. But the audience, the ones who have been watching, suffering, waiting, they heard everything, loud and clear. This was not a story of war. This was a story of identity, of a people no longer willing to be shamed, a nation tired of being the target of every blame game, a culture that has contributed science, philosophy, poetry, and power, and finally said, enough. When Iran struck that night, it didn't just hit a military target. It struck the very heart of Western double standards. It struck at the narrative that some lives matter more than others. It struck with the kind of truth that doesn't need translation. And now the world must decide not just where it stands, but who it stands for. Because silence is no longer neutrality. Silence is complicity. And the next time the oppressed rise, whether it's in Tehran, Gaza, or anywhere, truth is buried under empire. Those who stay silent won't just be ignored. They'll be remembered as the ones who chose comfort over courage. This was the night the veil was lifted, the night arrogance was humbled, the night a nation said to the world, not with words, but with action, we are not afraid. There are moments in history when everything changes, not with a declaration, but with action. This was that night. Iran didn't just launch missiles. It launched a message that pierced through decades of oppression and manipulation. For years, the narrative has been one-sided, framed by the West, sold through media, and forced through sanctions. But on this night, that narrative collapsed. Iran didn't blink. It didn't ask permission. It shattered the illusion of Israel's unbreakable dominance. It struck with precision and poise. The world had long convinced itself that Iran was a cornered nation, a pariah. But what unfolded was a display of strength forged in survival. Iran redefined what power looks like, not with arrogance, but with clarity. It was the moment the region's geopolitical tectonics shifted. That night, Iran proved that true power doesn't need to ask for recognition. It forces the world to look again. For decades, Israel has operated with a shield of perceived superiority, military might, Western backing, global silence. That shield cracked that night. Iran didn't just challenge a military force. It challenged the myth. Israel, armed with the best defense systems in the world, failed to prevent the psychological impact of being hit and hit hard. That night shattered something deeper than infrastructure. It shattered the idea that some nations can act with impunity while others are told to stay in line. The world saw that pride built on domination is not eternal. Iran's strike reminded every so-called invincible power that no throne is safe when justice is rising. It was the night when the oppressed stood tall, and the self-proclaimed untouchable was forced to reconsider its reality. It was a historic checkmate, not just on the battlefield, but in the psyche of global power structures. As Iran's missiles struck and Israel's image faltered, the world responded with nothing. No outrage, no condemnation, no emergency resolutions. The same nations that chant about sovereignty and law fell silent. Their silence wasn't just political, it was moral collapse. Because when it was Iran taking hits, the media screamed. But when Iran retaliated with force and focus, the silence screamed louder than any bomb. It showed what many have long known. Justice in global politics is selective. That night, the silence of world powers exposed the double standards. It exposed how the rules bend when allies are at risk. It showed that those who claim to defend democracy only do so when it's convenient. And yet, in that silence, Iran stood louder than ever. It didn't need applause. It didn't need validation. It simply stood. And in doing so, it condemned a world order built on hypocrisy. Iran's strength didn't begin that night. It was revealed. This was the culmination of years, decades, even centuries of pressure and perseverance. Iran has been demonized, sanctioned, threatened, isolated, but every attempt to break it only made it stronger. That night was the eruption of a long-suppressed truth. This is not a nation to be dismissed. This is not a culture to be erased. From poets to physicists, from architects to revolutionaries, Iran has carried a legacy of resilience. It has been pushed to the edge, yet never let go of its identity. The world has tried to paint Iran in black and white, but it is a canvas of history, intellect, and indomitable pride. That night, its retaliation wasn't reactionary. It was generational. It was ancestral. It was a nation speaking not just to its enemies, but to its future. We are still here, and we will not bow. While the West postures with declarations and diplomacy, Iran rose with action. The night it struck back, it claimed something far greater than land or leverage. It claimed moral authority. For too long, morality has been monopolized by those who violate it. Nations that destroy under the guise of protection, that fund wars in one breath and speak of peace in the next. But that night, Iran exposed the imbalance. It acted not out of recklessness, but response. Not out of chaos, but control. And in doing so, it turned the tables. No longer was it just the accused. It became the accuser. And the world couldn't handle that truth. The silence wasn't just political strategy. It was shame. That night reminded us all, when power is used to dominate, it corrupts. But when power is used to defend dignity, it commands something far greater, respect. What happened that night wasn't just for Iran. It was a signal to every nation that has been bullied, bombed, broken by superpowers. It was a rallying cry for the oppressed, the silenced, the ones who have been told to wait their turn, follow the rules, accept their fate. Iran showed them what happens when you stop asking for justice and start embodying it. That strike wasn't just military, it was metaphysical. It told the global South, the colonized, the forgotten, you are not alone. You don't need to beg for dignity. You don't need to apologize for existing. You have the right to rise, to speak, to fight when you must. And when the world stays silent, let them. Because silence isn't a wall, it's an empty room. Fill it with your voice. Fill it with your truth. That night, Iran lit a flame the world can't unsee. And for those still waiting for their moment, your time is coming.